Well, a special sitting of Dublin District Court was convened tonight. 13 people were charged in connection with today's violence. 4 people were charged with smashing the windows of a store on O'Connell Street and looting the contents.
O'Connell Street is returning to normal tonight. People are back on the street where only hours before violence had erupted. But reminders of the day's mayhem remain. Roadworks which rioters used for ammunition against Gardaí. While the clean-up operation has been completed, it will be some time before today's shocking events fade from memory.
I would have thought that in the context of the march in the first place, because this is the first such march that has ever taken place here, that a lot more thought and planning would have gone into the preparation of the march and the security for the march than seems to have been the case.
People would have torn down whatever type of fencing we had. It was very, very difficult to see it off a work site in absolute terms. We did what we could, and as I said earlier, we could not have foreseen this.
Gardaí arrested 41 people today. Most of those arrested were charged at Garda stations and released on bail. At a special sitting of Dublin District Court this evening, 13 of those arrested were charged with various public order offences. The accused are aged between 17 and 30 and include 2 women. Each of the defendants has a Dublin address. 3 are foreign nationals. One 20-year-old man is charged with arson, causing €20,000 worth of damage to 2 Mercedes cars. 4 people, 2 Lithuanian men and 2 Irish women, are charged with kicking in a shop window and looting a shoe store on O'Connell Street. A number of people were charged with throwing bricks and glass bottles and shouting abuse at Gardaí. 6 Gardaí were injured in today's violence. Most of those who appeared here at Dublin District Court this evening were remanded in custody with consent to bail. However, bail was refused in 2 cases. Judge J.P. MacDonald noted that as files are being prepared for the Director of Public Prosecutions in a number of cases, more serious charges may be brought. Jonathan Clinch, RTE News at Dublin District Court.
Party leaders from across the political spectrum have criticised today's violence. The Taoiseach blamed Republican dissidents for starting the trouble, although he said they were quickly joined by local people.
Condemnation of today's events was swift, led by President McAleese, who said the unnecessary violence was totally unacceptable. Other political leaders also expressed their disgust.
I think these are disgraceful scenes. It's an attack on free speech, an attack on society and an attack on our democracy, and I condemn it out of hand unreservedly.
Thugs and elements of the Republican family who came prepared to create mayhem and violence.
Those people today who are using the national flag, defiling it, to attack members of our own Garda Síochána really have handed their opponents a huge victory today.
Sinn Féin was swift to distance itself from the violence.
We said that the march should be allowed go ahead, and we felt that the people that were organising the rally, the Love Ulster rally, were looking for a reaction, a negative reaction from the people of Dublin. So that was the reason why we were asking people to stay away from the centre of town today.
But Republican Sinn Féin, which organised what it said was a peaceful demonstration against the parade, claimed it was irresponsible for the authorities to allow the march to go ahead. The Taoiseach, meanwhile, levelled the blame for starting the trouble on what he called dissident Republicans.
But there were quickly swelled from people who were certainly were local. Some of the ripping, the petrol bombs, the ripping of the pavements, and the severity of as the senior Gardaí involved in the operation said, these were people with serious intent.
Questions will no doubt be raised about the handling of the Love Ulster march by the authorities, but there's near universal condemnation of the troublemakers who fomented the violence. David McCullough, RTE News.
The Loyalist protesters who were unable to parade in Dublin because of the violence have returned to the north, saying they may attempt to complete the march through the capital at some time in the future.
Loyalist protesters from East Belfast, including members of a unionist women's group, arrived back in the city this evening, disappointed that their march never really got underway in the capital, but full of praise for the Gardaí in what was, as one of the marchers put it, a very hairy situation.
It wasn't very pleasant, but on saying that, the Garda looked after us, well, and made sure that we were escorted through and protected as well. But it was just a sad thing to see.
Some of the people were afraid, yes. Most of us, or a lot of us who were in previous service and security forces, wouldn't have been, but there was an atmosphere that was unpleasant.
You could hear them screaming and yelling and ranting further down the street. So it was hairy.
Did you feel frightened? Yes.
Well, for goodness sake, I've been shot once, blown up 3 times. It was nothing to me, but I guess there would have been people who would have been frightened, yeah.
The Ulster Unionist leader Sir Reg Empey said the violence in Dublin, which prevented the parade going ahead, was a setback for North-South cooperation, a point echoed by the DUP MP Geoffrey Donaldson, who was at the Dublin protest and who met the Minister for Justice, Michael McDowell.
Unfortunately, there's a Republican minority who don't want a unionist about the place and who were determined to, by whatever means, including violence, prevent us from having our civil rights and exercising free speech. Republicans say they want Northern Ireland MPs to have speaking rights in the Dáil, and yet I'm a Northern Ireland MP and I can't even get speaking outside the Dáil.
Despite the violence in Dublin, all the protesters who left here this morning have returned back unscathed, and they're determined they'll go back to Dublin to protest again in the future if necessary. Brendan Wright, RTE News, East Belfast.
In other